from MSNBC, MSDNC, MS13 DNC. Enough is enough. Alvin Bragg fed up with Team Trump's delay tactics in New York hush money case.
Attorney Alvin Bragg told the judge overseeing the criminal case against Donald Trump today that newly disclosed documents should not further delay the ex-president's trial.
Yeah, and she's really happy about it. But they're on case 5 or 6 or 7 or whatever, charge number 132, 600 million, billion, trillion dollars. All of it completely stinks. It was rotten from the beginning. But as they collapse one by one, it becomes crystal clear that it's all totally rotten. But Alvin Bragg, big fat Alvin Bragg, while New York is overrun with American criminals and illegal criminals, this is what we should focus on. We got to do it right now, because if we don't, then people might vote for him.
Bragg argued that the documents handed over to Trump's team from the federal investigation into Michael Cohen had little meaningful new information, writing, quote, "The people now have good reason to believe that this production contains only limited materials relevant to the subject matter of this case."
Yeah. Whatever I say goes, right? So don't worry about any of that. And this is constantly what they do. AOC just recently, right, is questioning Bobolinsky and just saying, oh, no, well, that's not right.
What is the crime, sir?
You
specifically.
You asked me to answer the question. I answered the question.
No.
RICO, you're obviously not familiar with. Corruption
Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir. RICO is not a crime.
I mean, they just completely deny reality, which, again, for the millionth time, you kind of, I guess, have to respect the commitment to absolute insanity.
The president's legal team asked the judge in the case to either completely dismiss the charges or push the trial into the summer, blaming Bragg's office for the belated disclosure of these records. But Bragg writes today that the current delay until April 15th, quote, is a more than reasonable amount of time for defendant to review the information provided. He adds, quote,
okay, yeah, whatever. It's all nonsense. But this is about Stormi Daniels and hush money. So why now, Alvin? Right? You got plenty of other crimes you could be dealing with in New York. But right now, not in 2020, not in 2017, right? The Stormi Daniels thing is really old. So you had plenty of time to bring this. But now is the time. And it's gone on too long. We got to hurry up and get this taken care of.
Enough is enough. These tactics by defendant and defense counsel should be stopped. Harry, David, and Tim are all back with us. Harry, walk us through this filing today.
Sure. So there is a bunch of papers that were, in fact, turned over by the Southern District of New York, the federal office. There's some good reason that they, in fact, might have been doing it at the last minute, but it really doesn't matter. The legal question is, what amount of time does it take for Trump to process these and prepare his defense? So
yeah, but literally the same thing could be asked of fat Alvin Bragg. Why is it taking so long?
So you have his hyperbolic claims. It's 31,000 pages or this or that. But Bragg's filing mainly says, look, when it comes to it, there's a little bit of stuff about Michael Cohen. Fine, give him some time to incorporate that into his defense. 30 days will do it. And that really...
Yeah, enough is enough. It needs to happen right now. 30 days is plenty of time. These delay tactics need to stop. Well, bro, what? The lawfare obviously needs to stop. And even the term lawfare is... maybe it's not overused because that's what the left-wing establishment party is doing nonstop. And I can't think of a better word for it. But... this guy wants to bring this crazy case on top of all the other crazy cases and say, you know, these delay tactics need to stop. No, bro, it's you. It's you and your ilk that need to stop.
Should be the focus of the claim and the ruling by Judge Merchan. On the other hand, he is, the judge, somewhat interested at just how this happened, and he's indicated in the hearing he wants to kind of get to the bottom of it. But I think at the end of the day, without being able to point the finger at Bragg, and there's no reason to do that at all, the question really will resolve to how much time does Trump need?
Yeah, we definitely shouldn't be pointing the finger at Alvin Bragg. And, of course, by the standards of the left, why should we even believe this guy? You should put a woman of color in there, which I guess They already did. They're quite literally coming at him from every possible angle.
Surprisingly, he says either 90 days or dismiss the whole thing, but it's really a pretty modest, belated production, something that he can absorb in fairly quick order, and it shouldn't take more than...
Now, we know, and this is obviously a different story, but all four of the people on this panel, by their own narrative, would be considered wholly racist.
Even a month is a lot, but they've already acquiesced to a month. So I think that's what Merchan is likely to hold.
Tim, how worried do you think Trump is that this actually goes to trial?
I think he's worried about any of these cases going to trial. You know, his lawyers have tried to prevent witnesses from testifying. They've indicated they're going to make claims that he relied on outside advice when he forked over the hush money payments. I don't know that will stand in court, but obviously Bragg has a higher standard to prove here. It's a criminal case. He needs to show intent. There's a tape recording here. I might remind you, like there is in Fani Willis's Georgia case, there's a recording that Michael Cohen made of Donald Trump.
Wait, you gotta be kidding me. There's no reason for you to bring up big, fat, furious, phony Fannie Pack Willis. Why on earth would you want to invoke that case when talking about anything else? It only makes it even more connected to a collapsing, corrupt district attorney in Georgia versus the attorney general, who is also dealing with something kind of similar, not nearly as publicized as big, fat, furious, phony Fannie Pack Willis, but as I understand it, Tish James, who of course also sued the meatpacking plant, but she was involved in another sort of real estate scam where she had inflated the value of a property she was trying to sell.
An Irish society, an unpaid loan, and the hypocrisy of Letitia James. That's right, Letitia James being caught up in a fraud scandal, which is absolutely ludicrous because we know most of these politicians, most of these activist DAs, most of these politicized DAs are going after their political enemies by using whatever means they could justify by the law. And if they have to make up laws like New York did in order to go after Trump, then that's exactly what they'll do.
But that's a different story.
Telling him to go get Alan Weisselberg, the former CFO, to get a payment in order. So there's evidence here, but it's still a very high bar. I've always thought this is one of the weaker cases that have come.
Oh, yeah, this is one of the... So when you have Fannie Pack Willis in Georgia, that case completely collapsing, and this is weaker than that. So says MS13 DNC talking head. That's how bad it is. That even he has to admit that this is worse than a case that's already clearly fallen apart.
To Trump's doorstep. But having said that, I don't think Donald Trump wants to be on trial again anywhere. He tried to make the last two with...
Of course he doesn't want to be on trial. If he committed a crime, put him on trial, but you're just making things up and throwing at him, throwing spaghetti on the wall until, of course, it slides down and creates a huge puddle on the floor.
E. Jean Carroll and the New York AG's case show trials for him to court his base, and he got disastrous financial results. I don't know that he wants to go into another courtroom where he's going to be under oath. He's a horrible witness if he testifies. He can't, he lies, he exaggerates, he doesn't stay on script.
Oh, he lies and he exaggerates, kind of like you guys at MS13 DNC, sort of like that.
He's a lawyer's worst nightmare on a witness stand. So I don't think he wants to do this, but he may have no choice.
It strikes me, Dave Jelly, I'm sure you've heard the former president on the trail sort of referring to all of these cases, the Georgia case, the New York case, as local cases, as though they don't have national implications, when, of course, when anything tied to Trump has national implications. And as we've seen from Bragg, we call this the hush money case. So
if you had one, maybe two, then you say, wow, this is really strange. But when you're throwing everything at him, it becomes so crystal clear, and they just keep pushing.
As to differentiate it from the other election interference cases, but at its core, Bragg is arguing that this is about election interference. It's not about some one-off thing that happened in New York State.
Yeah, that's right, Alicia. And I guess I would remind the former president that when he says local cases, he actually means cases that are beyond his reach to pardon himself should he become president, because these are not federal jurisdictions. And so take your pick for the narrative on this one. We will hear Michael Cohen, David Pecker, and others retell the story about Stormi Daniels and the hush money to try to make it go away as a way to interfere with the election, to prevent voters from learning more information, derogatory information about Donald Trump. Or you can make it about the fact that he is a serial fraudster when it comes to business, because it's also the 30 plus.
Yeah. So for all those years, and I'm sure there's plenty of things that you could probably, well, no, there's probably not, because if there were truth to any of these things, then we would be able to see. I am open. I am ready, willing, and able to accept what's actually happening, but they're completely fudging the numbers, juking the stats, whatever you want to call it, and I don't know. I'm genuinely curious as to how anybody could be watching this and say, okay, well, that case didn't work, but we're going to do this case, and think any of it's real.
Count indictment is about business fraud in the state of New York. So this kind of has it all wrapped.
Yeah, but there's no victims, right? Letitia James is the victim. Fat Alvin Bragg is the victim when they have the National Guard in the subway system.
Into one. Is this the case? You know, the one thing in the voters' minds that we have not yet seen react to is a criminal conviction. We now have some civil judgments to look at. We have not seen a criminal conviction. It does that kind of,
because there was no crime,
shore up those persuadable voters who don't just want more of Donald Trump? Or do we see a reflexive, this is the deep state out to get Donald Trump, and we see the intensity ramp up? We don't know.
Well, no. I mean, the deep state doesn't exist until recently. Then they do exist, but they're awesome, and they're certainly not out to destroy Donald Trump.
Yeah, but this case might be the only one that we get to test that with.
I just got to ask you, Harry, Judge Merchan issued a ruling allowing a number of witnesses to testify in this case. That includes Michael Cohen, David Pecker, Karen McDougal. How do you think those people, Harry, impact this case?
A lot. And they go to exactly what David's saying and what you're saying, Alicia. In other words, they're going to permit the DA to present this election interference theme, even though we have trouble coming up with the shorthand note of it. But the story that they're going to be permitted to tell, the DA, is after Access Hollywood, which is coming in itself, the fact of the tape, he is reeling, and another revelation involving sexual misconduct could have really been fatal from the point of view and the time.
I wonder if the good folks over at MS13DNC are discussing the allegations against Democrat Mayor Eric Adams. Are they discussing that? I haven't seen any of those videos pop up on my feed.
Of the right before the election, when already his prospects were rough. Merchan, by the way, issued a flurry of rulings, a few dozen, great contrast with, say, Judge Cannon, who's methodical in the extreme down in Mar-a-Lago, and all of them tend to favor the DA. So not only will he be telling this larger story of election interference, Trump will be prohibited from trying to argue selective prosecution, advice of counsel, and by setting these ground rules in advance, Merchan will be in a position to control his courtroom and really try to nip things in the bud when Trump tries, as I'm certain he will, to get away with it.
Yeah. It's absolutely insane that these people are taking any of this seriously, and even crazier that they want you to take it seriously also.